You're very known for 9900 Wilshire Boulevard, the old Robinson's May site that you sold not once but twice, and both times to international buyers. So I guess if you could talk to us about those two transactions and kind of some of the challenges, obviously, that were part of that deal as well.
Sure. Well, it was first of all, it was thrilling working on that project twice. I mean, that's probably the two biggest, I'd say, highlights in my 32-year career so far.
Yeah.
And it was beyond exciting. It was interesting when I first sold it in 2007 to Candy and Candy.
Hmm.
The land site, it's 8 acres. And
Right.
we sold it for $500 million.
The largest
And,
transaction in Los Angeles County at the
yeah,
time.
and
Yeah.
and in meeting the buyers, well, first of all, in order to find the buyers,
Right.
because CBRE is an international platform, I was able to call my colleagues all over the world
Mm.
to figure out which which office is located in a city that might have developers that would want to come to the Los Angeles area and build a development on an iconic piece of real estate. So I thought about the major cities in the world and I called the brokers in those major cities to find out if they would have clients that would be interested in this site. In doing that homework, I was able to find a broker that was based in our London office that had a great relationship with Candy and Candy, which is the developers that bought the site in the end. And so it was interesting to see they have different terminology in the way they handle just typical business words that we use for purchase and sale agreements and deposits. And so there were some nuances that we had to understand the difference and how they do it there versus here. And then having them come out here and see the properties, see the competitive developments that they would, if once their property was developed, they would be competing against. It was fascinating seeing it from their perspective. And then they closed the deal. And then we have, of course, the downturn. In 2008, we went into that deep recession. And then unfortunately, they lost the property a few years later. And then it sold again to a Chinese company called Joint Treasure. I was not directly involved with that sale, although I did do consulting behind the scenes for Joint Treasure when they ended up buying it.
Right.
They bought it for 150 million, which was a big drop from what we had sold it for 500 million.
Right.
They sat on it for a while, and as the market started to get better, in 2010, they bought it in 2010, and then in 2014 we sold it for them for about 420 million or so, and that was to actually another Chinese buyer that was based out of Beijing, and that their name was Wanda.
Yes.
So they bought it, and in dealing with, I guess your question was, what's the difference in dealing with like the domestic buyer versus an international buyer?
Yeah.
What I learned in that situation with Wanda and another big deal we sold in downtown LA to a buyer out of Shanghai called Greenland,
Hmm.
is that both buyers, when they knew that they were going to, when they waived their contingencies and their deposit became non-refundable,
Hmm.
they made a public announcement, actually to the media, that they had purchased the property.
Oh,
When in
wow.
fact, they hadn't actually purchased it yet. They just made a commitment that their deposit was not going to be refundable.
Uh,
And the domestic buyers would never make an announcement to the media at that stage. They would wait until the property actually closed the deal and title transferred.
right.
But both times those buyers did not. And it was tricky because with 9900 Wilshire being such a large deal and a lot of people watching it,
Mhm.
and we had a lot of buyers, we had 19 offers on that piece, they went non-refundable with their offer pretty quickly. we hadn't even had a chance to let the other buyers know that
Oh,
we had identified a buyer. Also, I remember the seller was very conscientious about letting the city of LA know and the city of Beverly Hills as to what was going on with our transaction.
mm,
So when the news hit, and I think when the buyer went non-refundable with their deposit, and they're in Beijing at that time, they announced it to Bloomberg, and it went live in Asia. And luckily, my seller found out about it very early in the morning that this news had opened up in Asia. So when we were waking up in the United States, we knew that they had bursted the news. So I got a call at 6 o'clock in the morning. Then I had to call all the other buyers and let them know that they're going to see this in the news when as the day progresses, but that it actually is not true. They didn't actually close on the deal, and so we had to do the same with the mayor and city council, and so we just had to move very quickly. So that was probably the biggest surprise. But of course, the seller felt great that the buyer was so confident they were going to close the deal that they've already announced it to the world that they bought it.
absolutely.
Yeah, but I haven't seen that ever happen,
No.
other than twice with both international buyers.
Right. Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's got to be out of the norm. And obviously, that's the nuance that you're not necessarily 100% prepared for when you're tackling international buyers.